to Sterling Heights Public Library. My name is Brent, and today we're doing a really easy project that's good for a nice cold winter day. We're doing potato leek soup. Come on down. So let's go over the ingredients. Super simple list today. We're going to need some potatoes. We're going to need a leek, nice big one. If you got smaller ones, 2 would work just fine. I got a little bit of chopped herbs here. This is just a little bit of thyme. Totally optional, but it's a nice touch. We're going to need a little bit of butter, some cream, and some chicken stock. So if you've never worked with leeks before, let's touch on what these things are and how you work with them a little bit. So basically, this is a member of the onion family. It's got a flavor that's very similar to an onion, but it's a little bit milder, and it doesn't have as much juice or crunch to it as an onion typically. The leaves on these things are flat rather than tubular, and the way these things grow, they're a little bit prone to getting dirt down inside of them. So there's a special way to clean these things, and we'll touch on that. So the greens are edible, but they do have a tendency to get a little bit tough and a little bit dried out if they've been sitting around for a little while. I've trimmed this a little bit because, well, frankly, this thing was almost 2 feet long when I picked it out of the garden, so it fits in the fridge better this way. So I'm just going to take the top ends off of this a little bit just because they're a little bit dried out. We are going to use some of that green there. Take the root end off. And basically the rest of this is completely edible. So just to make it simple, I'm going to break it down into a couple of smaller bits here. And then to get all the dirt out of these things, the easiest way I've found is to split the thing lengthwise into quarters. And I've seen guys, do this in different ways before, but this one works pretty well for me. And then cut it up into smaller pieces. And we're going to throw that in a bowl with some water and agitate it a little bit, and then run it through a strainer. And that should get all the sand and grit out of there. The same thing with these other bits here. You can see how that kind of comes apart into these layers. This one's actually not too grimy, but there's you can see a little bit of dirt in there, so we're going to get that out of there pretty easily because you don't want sand in your soup. Put some water in this bowl, bring it back and give it a little bit of a stir, and then I'll strain it, and that should get rid of all the dirt. So the reason this works, you want to get yourself a nice big bowl of some kind. I'm just using glass because it's a little easier to see, is because as you can see here, the leeks float and the dirt sinks. This little solution works pretty darn well. So I'm going to use a mesh strainer over at the sink, and I might do a second rinse on these just to make sure, but that's how you get the dirt out of a leek. Okay, so I've done a double rinse on these things and got them in a strainer here, but they're still a little bit damp. So in order to get them dried off a little bit, because we are going to be sauteing them, I'm going to go ahead and just drop them into a clean kitchen towel and just kind of fold it up for a moment. Give them a little bit of a press, and that should get most of the moisture off the outside. We're not too worried about having them completely dry, but this is just a nice little touch. Keeps things from splattering too much. So we're going to start off, we're going to get the burner going on about medium heat, and we're going to throw in about 2 tablespoons of butter. Salted, unsalted, doesn't really matter. I know some people get really picky about that. I don't. We're going to get this starting to melt down a little bit, and we're going to toss in our chopped leeks. And you can do them right out of the towel. That works just fine. And then we're just going to gently saute these for probably about 4 or 5 minutes just to soften them up a little bit. So our leeks have been cooking for about 5 minutes or so. They don't need to be fully cooked at this point because they're going to get cooked in the soup. But I just wanted to soften them up a little bit. I'm going to take a moment here and add in, we got about 2 teaspoons of that thyme here. That's fresh thyme. Again, totally optional, but I like the flavor that it gives, especially for a winter soup. I've got a couple of potatoes here that have been cubed up, about an inch, inch and a half dice. Yep, we're going to use all those. So that's about 3 good-sized potatoes. Peeled them. Okay. You want to make sure you're using a big enough pan for this, because if you suddenly find yourself with not enough pan, it's a real challenge. I've got some chicken broth here. You can use canned. This is homemade, but okay. And you want to make sure that that covers your potatoes. That's about all I'm going to use right there. That's a little bit less than 2 quarts. So we want to make sure that we've still got room in the pan for the cream, because we are still going to be adding about a cup of cream. So we've got this at a simmer now. We're going to let this go for about 15 minutes, maybe 20, just until the potatoes are nice and tender. The leeks are already tenderizing nicely at this stage. So these have been going for, well, almost 20 minutes now, and the potatoes are nice and tender, which is just what we want. You can kind of see that the broth has got a little bit of the starch from the potatoes in it too. It's clouded up a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and turn these off, and we're going to go back over to the countertop to show you how to finish this up. So if you wanted to leave this on the rustic side, you could go ahead and just stir in your cream right now and ladle it up and serve it. But we're going to bring this up a little bit of a notch here. So I got a stick blender here. Now if you don't have one of these, you can use a standard pitcher blender. If you're going to do that though, you want to be super careful if you're using hot liquid into that type of a blender. If you've ever done that before, you'll notice that when you kick it on, it has a tendency to come up rather forcefully. So if you're going to do that, make sure that you've got a towel on top of the lid. Make sure that lid is on tight and you're holding it down when you do that. Otherwise, you can have a real mess. So one thing when you're doing this, the outlets for this are up at the top, so make sure that the head is completely submerged before you turn this on. So, go ahead and just kind of get that going and keep that thing down, because you do not want this shooting all over your kitchen. This is going to take a few moments to get that pureed down. From there, we'll add the cream, adjust any seasonings we need to, and we'll show you how to serve it. Alright, so we've got that blended down. I'm going to go ahead and just add the cream right in there. Stir that in. And the potatoes, as you puree them down, thicken the whole soup. So we got that stirred together. Now I did use salted butter, and the chicken stock had some salt in it too. I haven't actually tasted this for seasoning yet, but that is definitely going to need some salt. I'm going to start off with about a teaspoon there. I do like a little bit of pepper in these things, so we're going to add a little of that. And stir that in and give it another taste. Okay. Yep, that's about right. So I'll take a second here and clean up and show you the rest. So to serve this, we're just going to ladle some into a bowl. Some people would have you use white pepper on this, maybe to, and avoid anything green. That would just kind of, when you puree it like that, it'd be a little bit more elegant because it wouldn't have the little speckles in it. But I like it this way. We're going to hit it with a little bit of parsley here. Chives would work really well. This actually, if you were to make this in the summertime and chill this, you'd have basically what you'd call vichyssoise, which is a classic French preparation. It's very good either way. If you're going to do the summer version, I would probably use canned chicken broth, just because it doesn't gel the same way that homemade stock does when it gets cold. So, potato leek soup, good stuff. Give it a try.